Hey, VC, been a long time since the four of us have gotten together. I'm here with my good friends, Josh from JC Flipside Vinyl, Gary from Physical Format Rock and Roll, and of course, Aaron Mutha Alamere. We are here tonight. We're going to talk about our favorite closing songs off some of our favorite albums. So it's going to be the last song, obviously, on the album. It's going to be a powerhouse. It's going to be a dynamic, fantastic song. Going to be epic. Can't wait to see what everybody here has chosen. But welcome, gentlemen. Hope you all had a good Thanksgiving. It's been a while since we've been able to do this. And the order we're going to go in, we're going to start with Josh and then Gary and then Aaron. Usually we establish that before we actually start rolling film, but I'm taking care of it now. So, and at the end of our picks, we're going to pick one dishonorable mention, one of our least favorite closing tracks from our collections. So, Josh, welcome. It's been a couple of weeks since we've had the
man.
You joined.
I've watched you guys' video. It's been fantastic. So I've missed being on the show.
Well, very cool. We're glad to have you. And you're going to start us off with your first pick.
Yeah, my number 5 is a song that I don't think I really appreciated until I watched a documentary. So it is the song released by Pearl Jam off their album 10. So the story about this song is, this is a lot of the songs are very personal to Eddie Vedder's life. Like, for instance, the song Black is a true story. He was dating this woman and they broke up. But the song Release is about his father. Now, when he was a child, his father, his real father, was someone that was a family friend. His mother never told him that hey, that's actually your father. It's kind of where that song, I Can't Find a Better Man, stems from. The mother married someone that she felt would be a good father, where really this person that was Eddie Vedder's father was dying. And he didn't realize until that, hey, that's your dad, until he was dead. And he wrote this song Release about, pretty much a cry for his father to release him, that it was always consuming him, consuming his emotions. And the first time they played it live, he actually left the stage and was crying. And the band's like, dude, are you okay? But it's such a beautiful song. And if you listen to that song and it's about someone that is trying to get the pain to be released, I mean, it's heartbreaking, but beautiful at the same time. And it's one of Pearl Jam's most beautiful songs. What a way to end an album with such a personal song. I absolutely love it. So Release is my number 5 by the band Pearl Jam.
The thing about having a famous kid is, if you messed him up, you get to hear about it, like, for the rest of your career, It's like, oh, that song's about me. Oh, I bet that song's about me, Yeah, it's never like, my mom was the best. I love my mom. I love you, Mom. It's always about how you messed him up and screwed him up and all that. So
exactly.
Poor
they see most musicians have the issues.
Yeah.
Well, nice pick.
Yeah.
Really cool first choice.
My first pick is the total opposite end of the spectrum. As far as your song had a lot of meaning, I don't think this has much meaning to it. I went from November of 1976 for one of my favorite Kiss albums, Rock and Roll Over, with Making Love. Starts that out. What's the last song? Closing one. Now, when I started thinking about this song, though, and I never thought about this until I got older, this song's a little bit on the rapey side. When you think of some of the lyrics.
Is there a little bit? Is there ever just a little bit on there?
A lot. It's a lot of the rapey side.
He's got the line in there, red light, green light. Red light, green light, don't say no. She says stop, baby, go, go, go. That's a little rapey.
I'm not sure that would fly in 2021, but
yeah. But 1976, that was okay.
It was a different world then.
It's just a kick-ass song. It's got a great guitar solo in it. it sounds kind of almost like a Led Zeppelin infused kind of song to it. It's got a little bit of different Peter Criss style drumming on it. You know, it's when he was still playing drums and everything. Great vocal by Paul Stanley. I mean, the whole song is just a kick-ass song. It's short and it's just boom, man. And when it's done, you're like, ah, man, I could have taken some more of that. So it's just a great track. So that's my first pick.
And Paul Stanley always said Ace had a Jimmy Page's quality to them. That's why they first really attracted them to his playing. Yeah,
it does kind of have that sound to it. That solo does,
But,
I love everything about that solo.
Overall,
except for the rapey words, but you know.
Yeah.
Well, they're songs, so they're not real. Sometimes they, only stuff like Release is real. I don't think that's a real one, but
yeah, it's just trying to get some words that rhyme.
Yeah.
Yeah, Guns N' Roses had kind of a rapey album cover for
yeah, they did.
Destruction originally.
I think I have that right here. I won't show the other side.
Oh man.
All right.
Bring some class to us now, Aaron.
Yeah, we gotta wash our palates. We gotta get that funk out of our mouth.
Okay, I'll go with a different one. my palate was right on the same level as yours on this next one, but I'll switch it up a little. So I'm gonna go with the song "Crown of Thorns" from Mother Love Bone, Apple.
Oh, okay.
One of my favorite songs of all time. It's just a masterpiece of a song. It's about a girl that's a stripper in her life, and they added on an intro later on called Chloe Dancer, which goes with the Chloe Dancer Crown of Thorns. But ever since I first heard this record, that song has always stood out to me as like my favorite. Even though it's a slow one, I'm usually driven to the hard ones more. It's always been like my favorite song on here. And I love when I just love Andrew Wood's vocals on it too. And it's just got really killer lyrics, and it's a lot of emotion in it. And this is a very underrated album, and this is cool because this came out and then that we're 2 albums in a row in a way, because this was the Pearl Jam guys, a couple of them, and then they did the first Pearl Jam record right after this. So we're I should go. I could go the next record next. I have that point pulled out too, but I don't think I will. But just Crown of Thorns, and then it's been redone, by a couple people. Have resung it. Eddie Vedder does it live sometimes even, and that's really cool sounding. And it's just such an amazing song. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I think Josh, you probably are.
Oh, it's my favorite from them. Yeah, definitely. It's such a beautiful song. It's on the single soundtrack.
Yeah, that's with the Chloe Dancer part too. Yep. Yeah, that's really.
All right.
And I believe Chris Cornell's even resung it too. Wow. And then it's on a Charlie Benante. They've just written on his new album. It was on there. It's one of those songs that keeps gaining momentum, even though it's an old song.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Way to dig one up.
All right. Well, I feel like mine's kind of a no-brainer, I guess. But I am going to go with Gold Dust Woman off Rumors. And I love Lindsey Buckingham's guitar work on here. And, it's a Stevie Nicks song, but they just complement each other so well. Not only does he do great guitar work, but his backup vocals are so cool, the way they harmonize together on the chorus. It just sets such an atmospheric mood with that guitar work. It's such a perfect way to close out that album. And there's just kind of like this ominous tone to it, but at the same time, it's just got a great chorus. I don't know. This is such a great album. I know it's been played to death on the radio, but spending some time with this record, it just feels like an old friend. It's like going through a scrapbook. I've heard that album, I think, as long as, I was 7 years old when it came out, but my parents had that record and used to play it all the time. And I feel like I grew up with that record. And so it's just, it's a great album all the way through, but that the way it ends, it's so perfect. And It's kind of got like that steel guitar or whatever that Lindsey Buckingham's playing, and yeah, I don't know. I great Fleetwood Mac moment.
That's an album, like, one of those albums that has been overplayed, but I can still listen to it.
Oh, yeah.
I can still listen to that album, no problem. And that's honestly, if I would have thought of that, that probably would have been in my picks too. I didn't even think of that, but that is an awesome album closer. That cowbell in there too is really cool. That's a great song, man.
Yeah,
Good
well,
choice.
and I love Stevie Nicks. Stevie Nicks
Me
is
too.
so such not only a gifted songwriter, but a gifted singer, and just what she brought to that band. I mean, Fleetwood Mac was pretty much circling the drain when Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks came on board with the album before that, which was a self-titled album. But they were just on fire, and the fact that their relationship had blown up, and yet they're still able to complement each other so well, and lend so much to each other's songs, is just put all their animosities aside and just make some great music.
Yeah.
I have the same thing about that record. I grew up with, I'm the same age as you, so we had it on 8-track. So there was never really a closing track when I was listening to it in the car. It was just, it was on a loop basically. But then we also had the vinyl record, and that's just, you're right, it's an amazing song, and I never get sick of that record. I have a really great sound pressing of it, and it's just better than anything from when I was a kid. So it's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is there's some albums that I don't remember ever not being in my life. It's like from a child, born in '74, that were always on turntables, always at parties, and that's one of those albums. I've never gotten sick of it. And they said last year that was one of the #1 selling vinyl records. There's a reason, because every song is great and it's a masterpiece. And most of these albums that you look at that are defined as the greatest albums of all time, the first track is just as good as the last track, and that's a perfect example. So great pick.
Yeah, well, and what a great band. I mean, you had 3 songwriters in that band, and they were all just money. Every single album they were putting out, just these iconic tracks. And Rumors, I think obviously I think most people would consider it to be the best that lineup ever did. But damn it, what a great record. And yeah, I never get tired of it, even though those songs have been played to death on the radio. I don't care. I can still listen to that album and still enjoy it as much as I did when I was a wee little lad.
We'll have to say, I think the album before it is almost as good though. That's really.
Oh yeah,
good.
no, most definitely. It could have been a double album. I mean, they really, they complement.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah.
Well, yeah. All right, Josh, you're number 2.
All right, so my number 2 is a song that is my favorite song off this album. This is a legendary album that every song is considered to be a classic, and it's probably one of the biggest selling albums of the 1980s. I know that this band gets a lot of heat because the singer is a notorious asshole, but I think this is a fantastic song, and it's Rocket Queen by the band Guns N' Roses. I remember the first time I heard this album, the only song I knew off it was Welcome to the Jungle. And they had played Welcome to the Jungle at like 2 a.m. or something. And I was like, oh my God, I need to figure who this band is and go get that. And I ran out to the record store and got it on cassette, actually, because that's how much money I had at the time. And me and my brother listened to it. And every song we're like, oh, I think this is the best song on the album. And when we got to Mime Town, my brother said, this is my favorite song on the album. I'm sticking with it. But by the time we get to Rocket Queen, there was no way, we could deny the greatness of that song. And it's just such a fantastic song. And you wonder, I don't mind the Illusion albums. I don't mind Chinese Democracy. I know a lot of people hate it. But I do wonder if they had stayed on this trajectory of just a rock and roll band, just the Stones type of band, how they would be perceived, if they would have been perceived differently, because obviously their legacy is tainted. But Rocket Queen is my favorite song off this album. I don't know if it's my favorite Guns N' Roses song, but my favorite song off this album. So there you go.
Yeah, well, that was a band. I mean, they came out with the Lies EP. After that, which was sort of like a stopgap album until they could come up with more studio material. And then you had the Use Your Illusion, 1 and 2. And then, kind of the spaghetti incident there, they really ended kind of with a whimper. I mean, it was really a lame way to go out. And then, it was I don't know how many years between that and Chinese Democracy before, that record came out. But yeah, I wish, that band should have had so many more great albums than they did, if it wasn't for the drugs, if it wasn't for the egos, if it wasn't for all those things that kind of imploded that band. I mean, they could have gone on and been like a Pearl Jam, just kept putting out, subsequent albums, but, did what they, did best. And rather than kind of getting weird, and I don't know, maybe we'll get a new Guns N' Roses album in 2022, but
I think that the Illusions were so, not that they were bloated, because I love the Illusion albums, but there were so many layers and orchestration and people coming in and playing with the band. And I think that people really wanted, a lot of the hardcore fans wanted that stripped down sound that they had on Appetite, of just 5 hungry guys, but they weren't those guys anymore anyways, and Axl had kind of wanted a more grand production and sound. So
yeah, everybody's wanting the next, Appetite for Destruction. They keep waiting for the next album to be like Appetite for Destruction, and it's just like it's ever going to happen. But
I mean, think about that. Think about in 1987 when that album came out, and the second song, he's talking, it's so easy. He's dropping F-bombs. There's that line in My Michelle, your daddy works in porno now that mommy's not around. She used to love her heroin, but now she's underground. It's like they were singing about things that the other bands weren't singing about, like even, Metallica. I love Metallica, and Metallica, I think, has some of the greatest lyrics of that metal genre. Their lyrics were well thought out, but Guns N' Roses came out and they were singing about heroin and singing about porn and singing about, things that the other bands really were not. They like, Aaron always says, like, he loves the sleaze rock. I think a lot of those bands, wanted that aggression and that kind of taboo-ness of Guns N' Roses, but Guns N' Roses is so natural. They just
Well, people say Nirvana killed hair metal. I think it was actually Appetite for Destruction kind of, started that whole thing, because, even though in the, Sweet Child of Mine video or one of those videos, I mean, definitely Axl Rose is a little bit glammed out, but, the sound of that record, it's more, I think it's closer to like the Stones or the Faces than, it is to like White Snake or, some of the other kind of bands that are coming out. Not that I'm any kind of, hair metal expert, but, that is anyway how I always thought of it.
I mean, I was in high school during that time, so I always tell people, like, I feel like I was the prime demographic, right? Most music is geared towards the teenagers. And what I noticed the shift was when freshman year in high school, 1987, I was wearing an Anthrax shirt. Nobody knew who the hell Anthrax was. Nobody. Like, there's a few metal kids that would walk by and be like, yeah, everybody knew who Poison was. Everybody knew who Warrant was, which I'm not disparaging those bands. I like those bands. But when Metallica made a video for One, that was a huge step. When Guns N' Roses came with Appetite for Destruction, that was a huge step, because some of the people that were only into the Poison, only into the Warrant, were coming up to me and saying, tell me about Metallica. What else sounds like Metallica? Who's this Megadeth? So I started to notice people were into a heavier type of music. And then obviously Nirvana came, and It Smells Like Teen Spirit is kind of like a punk rock song. The whole album isn't like that, but they came out with a very aggressive, very loud song and that a lot of the metalheads could resonated with them, I think. But people were trying to get into heavier music. I really feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember when Guns N' Roses came out. I got Appetite for Destruction and Joan Jett Up Your Alley the same night. Got them both on cassette. Listened to them on the way home. Like you said, the only song I knew was Welcome to My Jungle. That was the only thing I'd heard. So I was amazed at how great that Guns N' Roses album was. I mean, that band just seemed like they were ready to take over the world. I mean, like they were like, you know, you guys keep mentioning the Stones, and that's what it seemed like. They were the next Rolling Stones, but they never quite matched that first album. You know, they're kind of like Boston. You know, Boston had that amazing first album and then never could duplicate it or come close to it. I don't think I like Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, but I also I think there's parts of it that are kind of bloated. I feel like, you know, what they should have done was taken all the best songs and made one album. You know, they weren't at a point in their career where I think they should have said, hey, we're going to put out a double studio album. I don't know. I just think that was a mistake. I think it hurt them in the long run. They shipped so many of those records. You know, I mean, it was just, they seemed to lose something at that point. I mean, I don't know. In my mind, you know, you mentioned two of the albums that I think in the 80s that had a lot of impact on the music scene in a way. I definitely think that Injustice for All did, because I hadn't really paid attention to Metallica. And I did. And then I kind of went back and, you know, rediscovered the other stuff. I definitely Appetite for Destruction. I also think a little in my mind, and you know, maybe you guys think it's stupid. I think Long Cold Winter had an effect because they added that blues to it. And like a lot of that stuff that Aaron likes, you know, a lot of that blues kind of rock, you know, that kind of stuff. I don't know. You start seeing more of those elements added into the hair metal stuff too. So I don't know. Those are just three albums that I always think had a big impact.
Well, I think Tesla too. I think Tesla came along and kind of, you know, blew hair metal out of the.
I think Tesla had that impact. I think they seem to follow like kind of after Cinderella with that. But
I don't think Tesla was ever hair metal, ever. You know, they were just straight up fun rock and roll band.
Yeah.
I don't think anything was ever hair metal. That's just a thing that came up with afterwards.
Yeah.
At all. So
yeah, when I was a kid. Oh, go ahead, Aaron. Sorry.
Yeah. You know, Appetite for Destruction to me, I think that's what hurt Guns N' Roses, having that huge success with that, and they became so popular so fast that's why they kind of faded out. Just because it's like they got all the money and the fame right away instead of having to do a few albums to get to that point. And I think that's what really knocked them back. And the other band that really had a big impact was Alice in Chains when Facelift came out. Nothing was like that when that came out, and that changed kind of. Everyone's like, "What is this?" When that came out, and it was that's another one of those key albums like you guys were talking about there.
But you know what's funny, Aaron, and I think you'll probably agree with this, is that when I was growing up and Alice in Chains came out, I didn't stop listening to any of that other bands, and everybody I knew was still listening to all those other bands. It was the media that was like.
Yeah.
Like I was listening to Chains, I was listening to Metallica, I was listening to Anthemic, I was listening to Warrant. I didn't stop listening to those bands. Cinderella, you know, I don't get it. I feel like it was the media's portrayal that people threw the Cinderella cassettes away. I didn't know anybody that threw their Cinderella cassettes away.
No, and if I would have grabbed them.
Exactly.
No, but it was the record companies that all of a sudden didn't want to really have much. They didn't put any push behind those bands anymore. You know, they would release an album and you had to go out and find it. You weren't seeing them on heavy rotation on MTV, you know, anymore. Nobody, you know, it's like they, you know, not that people like us thought, oh, well, you know, who cares about them anymore? But you almost felt like you should feel that way because that's what was being pushed down your throat. And, you know, it's kind of portrayed that way. So, okay, I guess I should get to my pick, right? You've been on this.
Before it turns into a metal episode.
Yeah, we're only on our second damn pick.
My next pick will be Matt Ford.
Okay, number 4 is, well, here's another album I think that made an impact. And I got to go with this. Because hallowed be thy name. You got that behind you? Yeah. What a way to end an album, for God's sakes. I mean, you know, just starting out with those bells and doom, 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 boom, doom, doom. I'm waiting in my cold cell as the bells begin to chime. You know, just you're ready for something fucking cool when you hear that, man. And then all of a sudden, when it kicks in, just a great song. I mean, that's how you finish a fantastic metal album, the new wave, heavy British metal, whatever. I said that backwards, but this was like such a landmark album because like a lot of people never heard the first two Iron Maiden albums, but this is the one that really broke them. And this is just a great album. And to close it with, arguably the best song on the album, what a way to do it. That's just fantastic, man.
I'm glad you picked that because that was one of my choices and I thought someone might, so I stuck it up there.
That was the one that I thought you and I might both have.
I
know you've got 50 other albums to choose from. So
great song, great album. It just shows a look at that band too. That's not even my favorite Iron Maiden album, but that song is highly ranked in my top Iron Maiden songs.
Me too.
It's probably the best closer they did.
Fantastic.
Yeah, probably so.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna stay in the metal mode here, and the title song is the single from this, and it's the last song on the record, which I always thought was really crazy when I bought it. And it's Twisted Sister, You Can't Stop Rock and Roll. What a heavy, great song that is to end the album. I mean, it's like that almost seems like it should be the opener. Just has that in your face where it gets you, but it's the closer on this. And there's their two looks, the street look and the whatever look. I like they're glam look, not really glam, evil glam look, I'll call it. Yes. But yeah, that's such a great song on this. And it's surprising that they put it at the end because it was their single and it was the most recognizable song they'd done to that point. And I just love that song, Can't Stop Rock and Roll. What a great album too. The whole thing's good, but that song is just so powerful. And that's why I picked it.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite of their songs. That's a great one.
All right, well, I'm going to continue in the metal vein, being the metalhead that I am, and I'm going to go with
On
the Stone.
Nice.
Riders on the stone. There's a killer on the road. There's a square. I could go on forever, but
Oh yeah.
Well, and if we were to do an episode about like best side A closers with LA Woman, I mean, you could have made a case for this album also, but Riders on the Storm, I mean, essentially that closes the curtain on the Jim Morrison era of the Doors. It's the last song on the last Doors album with Jim Morrison, but what a great way to go out. I really debated between the end. I mean, and every Doors album has just a phenomenal closing track. I mean, you got the end, you got When the Music's Over, you've got 5 to 1, the Soft Parade, so many great album closers the Doors had. But for me, I just love, I mean, you got the rain, you got the thunder, and just Jim Morrison singing so great. And it's kind of a sinister song about a serial killer and just a great atmospheric track. And I love Ray Manzarek's keyboard work on it. It's so cool. But yeah, epic track, epic band, great album. So had to go with that.
Yeah, that's an awesome. What's funny is you just said how that's, we're talking about these different heavy metal songs and everything, but probably that song right there sounds more sinister, really, more mysterious than these other songs that we're talking about. It's such an eerie, cool song. Man. I love that song.
Yeah, well, and Paul Rothschild, who had produced all of their albums up to that point, he was like, this stuff sounds like cocktail jazz.
Yeah, he hated it.
For coming up with, and it's like, how could you have possibly disparaged the song like that, or the stuff that was off that album? Because I think it's great, but anyway.
That song is so amazing. It could be an instrumental, and I would love it just as much. And you're absolutely right. It's so eerie. The keyboard work. They're the most metal, non-metal band. Their music is so sinister, so dark. I was obsessed with the Doors as a teenager. I remember I was like Columbia House, and I would get all the Doors albums, and my dad was so proud of me. Like any band I listened to from the 60s, my dad instantly was more proud, But to me, it was just as heavy as anything I was listening to. And it still is. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's phenomenal. And I think it's God, I'm trying to think of who the bass player on that album is. Jerry Sheff, who used to play bass for Elvis. So that boom, 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 boom. That bass lick on there is just killer. And the whole groove that they have, there's so many killer grooves. I mean, even from the Changeling to LA Woman to Riders on the Storm. I mean, they just lay this perfect rhythm down. And yeah, it's magic. But anyway. Yeah, I was gonna go at the end, but I'm like, it's a little too obvious. But Riders on the Storm, I never get tired of.
Yeah.
Josh, you're number 3. Oh, he froze.
I thought it was just me.
Gosh, wake up.
Yeah, no, I thought, well, maybe.
Oh, there you go.
Uh-oh. All right, well.
He really loved that.
All right, well, Gary, until Josh comes back, I'm gonna skip over him for now.
All right. Let's see here. Okay. My next pick is from one of those overplayed albums. Well, just as overplayed as Rumors was. I could still listen to most of this album. There might be a song or two that I skip, but the ending song is not one that I'm going to skip. Starts out with a puff from a cigarette, and then a spoken line before the music comes in. And it's one of my favorite songs on this album, and that's Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution. I love that song. And it was great to hear at the time when it came out at the age I was, and it was just like an anthem, rock and roll ain't noise pollution. I like the line where he says, rock and roll ain't no riddle, man. To me, it makes good sense. Yeah, good sense. Let's go. Bum, bum, bum. That's just great, man. That's just a great kick-ass song that, it plods a bit. It's got that little bit slower pace going to it. And I just think the whole band is going. I mean, this album, I know, like you said, it's been overplayed, but you can't dispute how perfect this thing is. This was just such a well put together album between AC/DC and Mutt Lange's production on this thing. I mean, good God, this is another one, kind of like when we talked about Appetite for Destruction. I remember when that came out, listening to it. That's the way I was with this. When this album came out, and, of course, you heard the You Shook Me All Night Long single, and then going and buying the album. Well, actually, I had it on 8-track, and hearing the whole thing, just like, one song after the other, was just this kick-ass song. Hey, welcome back, man.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
But if you're just now joining us, we're on Rock and Roll Noise Pollution off the Back in Black album.
Nice.
That was the closing on this one. I said I was comparing it to Fleetwood Mac Rumors, as being an overplayed album that I still think is good. So
Oh, it's very
anyway,
cool.
that's my choice. Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution off of Back in Black. Now
was actually-
back to Josh.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and considering the fact that, you know, their lead singer had just died, you know,
Oh yeah.
you know,
Crazy.
reinvent themselves for that. But that's a great bluesy, ballsy rock song. And like, they didn't miss a beat. It's like, okay, well, Bon Scott's gone. Here's Brian. Keep on keeping on, you know.
I love that part. You know, when you hear him at the beginning, you hear him go, you know, just hear him taking a drag off that cigarette, you know, and he's like, "Hey there, all you middlemen, you know, throw away your fancy clothes. And while you're out there sitting on the fence, why don't you get off your ass and come down here?" You know, that's just great.
You're sure it's a cigarette though?
Well, it might not be, Aaron. I'm trying to keep it clean because this is on Jeff's channel, and I know that's how he rolls.
All right. Can I? Am I going now?
Yeah,
Yes.
we skipped over you. Back to Josh for your number 3.
All right. My
Had to
number 3
pinch
is
hit.
going to be off this album, Born to Run. It was so hard to pick a Springsteen song that I almost didn't pick one. But Jungle Land is such a fantastic song. It's such a, you know, Springsteen's always quoted as being cinematic, right? Where you can picture the movie in your head when you listen. And that's so true. What makes this album is so good is that, you know, from start to finish, it begins with Thunder Road. So they paint you a picture of, you know, what it was like. It's almost like, I feel like it's like a late teenage album. When I say teenage, I don't mean like 13, 14. I mean like someone that's like 18 years old, 19 years old, just coming of age. And that's what the stories, you know, dictate on this album. And Jungle Land has one of the best like saxophone solos. It's epic when you hear him play it live. I love Springsteen so much. And you know, his early albums, there's not a closing track I don't like. But I just picked this one because it's epic. And that's it. Springsteen, Jungle Land.
That is epic. And yeah, it does exactly what a closing song should do. I feel like when you have a good closing song on an album, you're just kind of like, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that was great. And that Jungle Land, you know, out in Jungle Land, you know, it's like,
yeah.
Bravo. You know? Great job, guys. That's the way you feel with that song. I mean, now for me, I might have picked My Hometown.
That's a great
just
one.
because that to me, that's I don't know. That's a very sentimental song to me. I have a lot of connection with that song. But Jungle Land, yeah, man, that's just that's right there. That's a great closer. Awesome pick, man.
And Darkness Edge of Town. That's another one.
Yeah. I might pick Jungle Land over that though.
Yeah. All right.
Aaron.
And
All right. Well, I'll get out of the metal for a minute before I get back into it. But this song it's actually not my favorite song on this album, but it's the most recognizable, one of the biggest hits they ever did from I think it's 74 maybe or 5. I can't remember. But it's Tush from Fandango. What a great closing track. I mean, the whole first side is live and it's really cool. And then you got that studio side that's almost perfect on this album. And to end it with their big hit, that's just, you hear that guitar riff at the beginning, it's instantly gets you partying, at least me. Love that song so much. And it's been one of my favorites since I was a kid. And, you know, I'm trying to keep it clean. So I went with that one.
And what's that song about?
It's about, it's about girls, of course. So, you know, that's why I loved it so much, I guess, when I was young and still do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
it's
and
just
what?
a riff, man.
It's cool the way even that little guitar line. You know, yeah, that's the ending there, man. That's all, folks. That's a great song.
all right, well, my album, or my closing song off an album that I'm gonna go with for my next pick. And I think the song could have been subtitled Requiem for the 1960s. I'm going with You Can't Always Get What You Want off the Let It Bleed album. Just from start to finish, it is such an epic anthem. You've got that boys choir at the beginning of the song, which is just like, what the hell is this doing on a Rolling Stones album? It feels so out of place. And if any of you are familiar with the comedian Tig Notaro, she does a great bit about how when she was growing up and in school, the teacher used to let the kids bring an album in and play it for the class. And a friend of hers was asking, like, what should I bring in? Like, should I bring this album in? And she's like, yes. And he's like, well, what song should I play for the class? And she's like, You Can't Always Get What You Want. It's a great track. And so he plays the intro, and it's got that boys choir intro. And then right when the boys choir intro stops, the bell rings. So like nobody else gets to hear, but like the kids there while the boys choir is singing. He's like, what the hell did you have me play? What the hell is this? And then it just like cuts off, and it's like, oh, that's it, But anyway, it's a funny little comedy bit that she's got there. But yeah, I mean, you've got the boys choir, and then you've got kind of the acoustic strumming. You got the French horn, which sounds almost like kind of a, what you'd play at a funeral. And then, the great Mick Jagger lyric. This was actually, if anybody is familiar with Rolling Stones history, there was a Rolling Stones Rock and Roll Circus, which actually was where the Rolling Stones debuted that song with Brian Jones on guitar. Obviously, it didn't have the choir intro, but that song had been kicking around since the Beggars Banquet era of 1968. But nonetheless, it's just a great track. It builds to a crescendo. I love at the end where just like everything's full force. You got the choir, you got the guitar, you got Charlie Watts banging the hell out of the drums. Everything just builds and builds. And then, it's just, I can't think of a better closing song. I mean, this really could be my number one. It is so great, so cool. And it's sort of like the death knell of the 1960s, all of the idealism and the peace and the love all went out the window. And then following, the Let It Bleed out and the whole Altamont tragedy and everything that happened with that. But anyway, that's my pick.
Nice. Great.
Good pick. I like it. Was that Nicky Hopkins playing piano on that?
Oh yeah, I'm sure it is. Yep.
Yeah, that piano at the end is great too. You're talking about how it just builds and it going on. That's great.
Yeah. No, it's so cool. It's druggy. It's psychedelic. It's hard rocking in places. It's just everything a good rock track should be.
Yeah.
All right. So for my number two, like I wanted to pick something for my number two that I felt was like a personal choice, something that was like really like, okay, well, I really, really love this song, and people might think I'm crazy for picking it so high on my list. And I really struggled because I was going to pick Eyes of a Stranger by Queensryche, but I decided against it at the last minute because when I think about, awesome, I love that song. Love it, love it, love it. But when I think about the last 20 years and a song that just I can't stop listening to, I don't get sick of, and that's going to be The Night We Met by Lord Huron. To me, this is one of the best songs written in the last 20 years. It is the music is heartbreaking. The lyrics are heartbreaking. The song is just fantastic in every possible way. I love the idea of thinking to yourself, well, what would I do if I could go back to the night we met? Would I, and it doesn't have to be a romantic love, but it, someone that has, seriously illed you or made you feel terrible. Like, what would I tell myself to not travel along with you? And, I love those lyrics and I love the song. And when I look back at the last 20 years or 20 years from now, I'm sure I will love this song just as much as I love, Eyes of a Stranger by Queensryche. So I went with Lord Huron, but Queensryche was a close tie.
Cool.
There you go.
I like it. Dig it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm up. My pick is one of those obvious ones, I guess. Once again, it's not really my favorite song on this album, but I mean, what a way to end it. The end, right?
Oh, yeah.
Off of Abbey Road. I mean, that's it, right? I mean, they're done. I like the fact that song, it's kind of a rocking song, right? For the Beatles, you get Ringo Starr gets almost like a little drum solo. He sounds great on it. He's doing the whole, Indian kind of dum 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 dum, and he's got a couple good rolls in there. You're like, go Ringo, man. He didn't get to do a whole lot of that in the Beatles, so you got to hear that. Now, Jeff, the guitar solos that are going on, to me, it sounds like, is that George and John both playing?
So they each take a turn. You've got, I think George starts off, and then John, and then Paul. They each take a turn with the solo. So yeah, it's actually all three of them.
Oh, okay. I didn't know about Paul playing that.
Mm-hmm.
I could tell that it was two different, guys playing, but
yeah,
that's cool. And then of course, and then it just abruptly stops, and you got the piano going. In the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make, and they like, we'll see you. I mean,
well, I think you can lump in. I think you can lump Golden Slumbers, Carry That Weight, and The End all together as one song.
Yeah,
technically.
Yeah, I mean, you could, and it is. Yeah, you're right. They do all go together for sure. But I kind of cheated on my next pick, so I didn't want to too much on this. I just went with the one song. It's just a great way to end a fantastic album.
Yeah.
And a career.
The way to go out. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe the impact that song had on me when I was young, of loving the drums too. So,
oh yeah,
the main reasons that I really love drums.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's great because I mean, Ringo is probably one of the most underrated drummers of all time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he really didn't want to do that drum solo. He had actually, the others had to kind of like, no, really, you got to do it. Go ahead, come on, Ringo. And then he finally like, okay, fine, I'll do it. He just wasn't that way. He didn't want to be like, oh, hey, look at me, I'm flashy on the drums, But they persuaded him like, no, come on, go ahead. We're gonna break up, dude. Go ahead, do it.
Yeah, yeah, take your shot.
Yeah, this is gonna be the last time you get to do this on a Beatle record, so take advantage of it. All right.
So up next, this band's already been used, but this is actually my favorite closing track on any album they've done. And it might be surprising, but maybe not. It's Strange Ways from Hotter Than Hell.
Oh, yeah.
My favorite guitar solo Ace Frehley ever did. Ace Frehley wrote it. Peter Criss sings it. Got killer lyrics, just a dirty groove song that I love. Always been my favorite song on this album. And Black Diamond's really close for my favorite closing track on a Beatles record. You got me thinking Beatles on a Kiss. But I think Strange Ways is my favorite. I love that song. Every time I hear the guitar solo, I still am amazed. Just that sound it has. I just love it. And the whole song, Peter Criss's drumming on that's amazing. Everything's good on that song. It's just an amazing, amazing song. And cool album too. Great album all the way through. But Strange Ways, I even like that maybe better than Parasite. I don't know. Ooh. Really close. That's close. The Ace songs on here, this whole album's amazing. But Strange Ways for me is just always the one where it just gets me. So that's why I picked it.
That's another one. If I would have realized that was the last track on that album, I might have thrown that in there too. Man, that's a great. Everything you just said is 100% correct. I agree with everything.
All right. Well, this band has so many rock anthems, iconic rock anthems, and many of them are actually closing tracks on their albums. But I'm picking this one. I was going to pick a different one, but I thought, I've already talked about this album. I've already talked about this track before. So I'm going to go with this one. I am going to go with Love, Rain or Me. by The Who. I mean, this is an epic double album, and this song is a perfect way to close out the album. Roger Daltrey, one of his most passionate, excellent vocals, and just everybody on it, from Keith Moon to John Entwistle to Pete Townsend, who wrote the track, and Roger Daltrey. Everybody just gives it their all. It's such a great track. It goes through so many different parts, and it's just a very moving, I mean, it's a great album, but you know, to close it out that way with one of their most moving, one of their most iconic and great tracks, you know, I think it's epic, and I can't think of a better Who. I mean, there's, you know, Won't Get Fooled Again was the one I almost went with because that's excellent as well. But yeah, I had to go. At the end of the day, I got to go with Love, Rain, or Me.
Yeah.
Not over or
Yeah.
or.
That's such a killer vocal.
Oh, yeah.
I saw The Who, the first time I saw them was in 1989 when they first got back together. That was the first time they'd done a reunion. They were celebrating 20 years of Tommy. So they did a whole bunch of stuff off of Tommy, but then they threw in, you know, some other songs. And they did Love, Rain Over Me. And that was, you know, at that point, Roger Daltrey was still in fine voice and everything. And that was easily the best song of the night. When they did that live at that time, it was just, you know, when they finished it, you're just like, wow, you know, so powerful. I mean, Roger Daltrey just pours his heart out in that song, man, and it is just breathtaking. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, and he's influenced so many vocalists that came, you know, after. I mean, how many, with the exception of Robert Plant and Ian Gillan, I mean, there weren't many vocalists who could do what Roger Daltrey could do in, you know, 1973.
Yeah.
Could be Burton Cummings.
What's that?
I'll throw Burton Cummings in there.
Yeah, no, he's another great one. Yeah, but reaching, you know, Roger Daltrey's range is just so, you know, phenomenal, and you know, influenced like the Eddie Vedders of the world. But
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of their best songs, and not only one of the best closing, just one period. So awesome pick. My number one has been mentioned. It is Black Diamond. Obviously, you know, I knew that song before I got the first album because I had heard it on Kiss Alive. Kiss Alive was the first Kiss album I ever heard, and you know, and then tried to grab all their other albums. But that is such a killer song. I mean, all the songs you guys picked are killer. I mean, I love those first, you know, Kiss albums. But Black Diamond, I just love, you know, when Peter Criss comes in and hit the harshness of his voice, and it's just such a killer song. I can't say anything else about it that probably hasn't already been said. It's awesome.
Yeah, that was hard for me to choose between that and Strange Ways.
Yeah.
They're both neck and neck to me. Amazing. And I like how you know, it starts off with Paul, goes to Peter,
Yeah.
and back to Paul. That's really cool. It's super
Absolutely.
heavy. A lot of people don't like the outro, but I actually like that. The
Me
weird
too.
thing, and I love that. I think it's amazing.
I can't get enough of it. I've never gotten sick of that Kiss song. You know?
No, great one. Amazing. Great pick.
Yeah, that's super great closer. I bet if Chris was here, he would pick Then She Kissed Me off of Love Gun for best album cover. Closer. I mean.
That was close to being on my other list.
I thought about it too. Okay, my number one is, you know, kind of like Jeff said. I had some of these albums where at first I'm like, well, I don't know. This seems pretty obvious. Somebody else will have it, but I'm like, no, I don't care. And this one, I just think, it closes this album. This album is generally considered, you know, in the top 10 greatest albums of all time. And this is the one I'm cheating on because I'm picking two songs as the closer because they fade into each other. and I'm picking Brain Damage and Eclipse off of Dark Side of the Moon, just because this, to me, this is a perfect example of kind of what I've been saying about some of your guys' picks, as far as how you should feel with a really good album closer. And with this, I feel like when it's done, you're like, yeah, that, that finished this album. That was a great journey. This whole album is, it's all about the human condition. It's about traveling through life, right? And when he talks about there at the end of everything, everything is coming in tune, but the sun is eclipsed by the moon. Basically, you're dead. You're dying at the end of this. You still hear the heartbeat going on for a little bit, but once you finally know everything is in tune, life is over. and it finishes. This whole song is a journey, all the different things that go on in life. And, the way it says, all that you see, all that you touch, everything, all this stuff going on. And it's just so amazing. This is another album, an overplayed album that is still great. I still love it. I can listen to it. I can listen to the whole album. And this is definitely an album that takes you on a journey. All the songs fit together. They're all a piece of the puzzle. And Eclipse finishes it. It's the final piece in that puzzle.
One, I think it's interesting, Roger Waters saved that vocal for himself. That had been strictly David Gilmour with Richard Wright, sort of harmonizing with him up until that point. And then you get to that last song and it's all Roger Waters, almost sort of like, well, the grand finale is going to be me. I'm saving the best for myself, the best for last. But it's such an affecting Roger Waters vocal. Some people, could take or leave Roger Waters. They feel his vocals are a little bit too nasally, or just he's not the vocalist that David Gilmour is. But I can't imagine David Gilmour singing that song. It's such a perfect song for Roger Waters to sing. And I agree. I mean, they're really basically Brain Damage and Eclipse are the same song. They just subdivided it for whatever reason. But to me, you're not cheating, Gary. That's essentially this, they flow right into each other. So I don't think that's a cheat. But yeah, it's funny because, I listened to that album growing up because my dad had it. And then when I was like in high school, I actually went out to buy the cassette. And I remember that song, but I thought the song was called Dark Side of the Moon. I thought that was like the title track. And I'm looking at the cassette like, well, where the fuck is that song? It's not on here. Like, where is that? Got to be here somewhere. Like, what the hell? And then you realize, well, that's what they say in the song, but it's not actually the title of the song. And another thing that I'll say is that guitar picking is the same as Dear Prudence. There's a similarity there. If you think about it, like listen to Dear Prudence and then listen to Brain Damage. And it's the exact same guitar picking style that John uses on Dear Prudence, which I thought, was interesting. But yeah, hands down, my favorite track on that album, no question. If I could only hear one track off that album for the rest of, till the end of time, it would be that one for sure. So,
they actually wanted to call the album Eclipse.
Yeah,
originally
somebody else had taken it. Yeah,
some other band came out in 1970. I can't remember the band, but they came out with that title, so they changed it to Dark Side of the Moon from Eclipse.
And you really have to listen, like even as the song's ending, you got that heartbeat that's sort of picking up at the end, and then you like listen like, oh, there is no dark side of the moon. Matter of fact, it's all dark,
Yeah, right.
To keep listening to pick up little stuff like that, which I love about that whole album.
Yeah.
And Gary, when they play it on the radio, they always play it together.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah,
they do.
It is fantastic. I agree with you, Jeff. That is my favorite song on that album. Easy. It's not even a competition. It's such a great song.
Yeah. That's my number one.
All right, Aaron, what you got?
I'm torn between two here, but I'll only do one. I was gonna go with one from that band, but I'm not gonna do it.
Which band? Deep Purple or Beatles?
Yeah, the deep
Okay.
Beatles. I was gonna go with No One Name, but I decided I've talked about that a lot, so I'm gonna go with this one. From this record, Dissident Aggressor. I think it's the best closing track this band's ever done. It's amazing. I even like that Slayer did it, and it's just an amazing, heavy, phenomenal metal song from my favorite album by them. So it's probably my favorite song on here, actually. But Dissident Aggressor, it's just powerful, in your face, great metal, and my favorite closing track. Maybe my favorite metal closing track. One of them anyway. So love that song.
Wow. That's cool. I was not expecting that. Did you just say that's your favorite Judas Priest album?
Yes. Sin After Sin. Yep.
Wow.
That one, then Stained Class. They're both really close to me, but I think Sin After Sin's always been my favorite. But Dissident Aggressor.
Where does Sad Wings?
What's that?
Would Sad Wings be in your top 5? Sad Wings of Destiny.
I love that.
It would be in your top 5. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the 7. Most of the 7 stuff are like my top 5. I love the 80s stuff too. It's just I really love their everything up to Stained Class. All their stuff's good, but this is my favorite. And Aggressor, I think, is a perfect way to end it. And it's just, it's amazing.
Nice.
I know it's Jeff's favorite too, so I had to pick it.
No, well,
now he's got to pick something else.
Now I got to scratch. Yeah, it was. Now I got to. What am I going to use as my? All right. Well, shoot.
Well, give me Huey Lewis.
That was my pick too. I'm just kidding. Well, I don't know. Being a thrash metal guy like me, I'm sure you're like, oh, Anthrax or Megadeth or Metal Church, like that, or you're expecting something like that. But no, I if I surprise you to know, I'm actually a Beatles fan, and so gotta go with A Day in the Life. Yeah, and I remember this was the first proper Beatles album that I ever bought as a kid. I remember going to a store here called Kmart and up, and I think it was because I think it was the cover that really sold it to me. I remember still like going to the store. They had Abbey Road. I think they had some of probably Meet the Beatles and some of the early stuff, but I just gravitated towards this cover because it was like, holy crap, like what is going on with this, and who are all these people, and like why are the Beatles here twice? Like this is the old Beatles, and then you got the more modern Beatles. And as a kid growing up, I mean, you heard certain songs from here off the radio. You heard Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, Getting Better, I'd heard before. I think I'd heard the title track with a little help from my friends. I know I'd heard on the radio, but I'd never heard A Day in the Life before, or a Sgt. Pepper reprise for that matter. And so, I can still remember the first time hearing it, and you got kind of, John Lennon's acoustic strumming, you got Ringo's drum fills, which they mic'd the drums so great on this A Day in the Life. And then the crescendo where you've got the orchestra, which builds that, kind of thing. And you get into the woke up, fell out of bed, dried the comb, that whole piece. And then it goes back into, you got the John, just like keep going, like more, like his voice keeps getting higher, and then the orchestra, and then he sings the final verse, and then again you get that cacophony of sound where it sounds like controlled chaos, and it just keeps getting more profound. I mean, that just like blows your mind the first time you hear it. And I was probably like 9 or 10 years old when I first heard that track, and just like, whoa, like I'd never heard anything like that before. And then the boom, yeah, you know, that crashing piano chord, and then it just sort of like slowly fades out. It's just such a great track, one of the greatest tracks John Lennon ever recorded. I don't know. I mean, there's so much that can be said about that particular track, but you know, and I love the fact too, you know, you got Sergeant Pepper, and then they throw in this reprise, which technically could have been the end of the track, could have been like the perfect bookend. We've got Sergeant Pepper, and then we've got the reprise, album over, you know, done. Here you go. And it still would be one of the greatest albums ever. But then it's like, no, wait, here, we got one more little extra track for you. And this one's going to blow your fucking mind, you know. I can't even imagine, you know, I mean, I know how it was for me. But like in 1967, even at the height of all the psychedelic craziness and that, nobody had ever heard anything like that before. And it was just like wow, you know, I was just like sitting there after the album's over, just trying to like process what you just heard. And now it's easy because I think, you know, it's sort of like after all this time, like the impact is sort of lost on people. But
Right.
I'm telling you, you know, it is unlike anything you've ever heard before, and it's great. And you know, I don't know
I'll
what
have
else
to
to
say, Jeff, when you said we were going to do this, that's the first song that came to my mind. And I knew you were going to put it on. That's why I didn't choose it. But that definitely would have been one of mine too. But I knew you were going to
Yeah.
have it.
Well, it was
Yeah.
between that and When the Levee Breaks, right? So
Yeah, I thought about that one too.
yeah.
Yeah, incredible pick. Awesome song.
That's why it's first there, because I knew it's number
I
one.
saw it over your shoulder and I'm like, okay, well, I know Aaron's gonna pick that one, so I'm feeling pretty good about it. But
Yeah.
well, it's very cool. Like none of us doubled over, and that was one of the things we talked about off camera before we actually started recording. Was
Yeah.
well, I'm pretty sure, you know, I'm gonna have an overlap with Gary. I might have an overlap with Aaron. You know, Aaron and Josh might have some overlap, or you know,
We almost
and Josh, you guys are both Bruce Springsteen fans,
Yeah.
so I was
we
wondering.
had overlap that we didn't use.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's
Kinda-
funny.
Yeah. I also had a
Yeah,
couple-
great picks, everybody.
I was really close to indifferent.
Yeah, that'd be another great one. Well, now let's get to our dishonorable mentions. I know that we at each take a pick for. Josh, what's your, and by dishonorable mention, this is going to
Okay.
be an album closer that we think totally sucks. Could be by a favorite band of ours, could be by an album that we own, but for whatever reason, like this song just completely blows. So
Yeah, to say the least. So there's very few times in my life where I've been listening to an album and been like, all right, this is a good album. And then the last song comes on and I go, what the fuck did I just hear? And that's Axl Rose rapping. It's the last song on there. He put a song that his band members didn't even know was on there. And it's Axl Rose rapping. That's all I need to say. And I literally said, what the fuck just happened? And it's unlistenable. It's an unlistenable track. You know, it's
I like
awful. I'm sorry for Rose's fans.
My world.
My World. Do you like My World?
Yeah, that's all right. I like it. I don't hate
man,
it.
I don't like
I can see your point though.
yeah.
That's definitely
Not
the
for me.
worst track on those albums for sure.
that almost made Aaron's top 5 list.
It's not quite inside. You know?
Interesting.
Yeah.
First, before I make my pick, I just wanted to say I'm kind of disappointed. You guys didn't send me the memo telling me that it was hat night. Okay. I didn't wear my hat.
It's always had.
Yeah, well, with you it is. I know that, but these guys don't always wear it. Well, Josh does a lot.
Gary, but
like-
but you've got hair, okay? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
say
but
that
look
that's
at that.
part of the
Look at that
reason.
forehead shining there, man. Jeez.
Yeah, you got more
got
hair than I've had
a
since
little bit
I
of-
was like in my late 20s.
Okay, on to my pick. I mean, nobody's not watching now anyway, but my pick is from a band that I love, and I love this album, the Green River album by CCR. But they end the album with "The Nighttime Is the Right Time," which is a Ray Charles song, and I don't understand why. It's like I almost feel like it was like, well, we need another song. Well, let's do a remake of this. And I don't know. I've just never liked it. For some reason, it just annoys me when I hear it. And, but like if I'm playing the album, unless I get up and, go take that off, I listen to the end of it. But I don't know. I've just never liked that version of that song. So.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just leave well enough alone.
Yeah. I would rather they just had a shorter album and just not done that song.
This is really tough because I have two of them that are equal. And they're both on albums I love, by bands I love. But we've already done a lot of Kiss. I had a Kiss one, but I want to do that. So, and it wasn't From Love Yet.
Was it Kiss Alive 2?
Yeah, it might have been. It might be that my backup. Because that album is so good, and then all of a sudden, Any Way You Want It comes on. So that's like the album. But I'm gonna go with one of my other favorite bands, and Jailhouse Rock on Girls, Girls, Girls. It's really weird on this record. This record I love all the way through. The neck comes on, and it's like not my favorite version of that song. And it's just kind of weird sounding. I don't know. It's just always, and I was almost going with a different Motley Crue song, but I think this one is more out of place even than Branded from Generation Swine.
Yeah.
But but Jailhouse Rock is just like, it's like the same thing with the Creedence. It's like it would have been like a perfect record without it.
Yeah,
there's nothing for it.
Yeah, I never cared for that remake either. I love the original Jailhouse Rock.
Oh yeah, it's like my least favorite version of that song. Usually, if a metal band redoes a song, I like it more. This one I like less, and I was like, I don't know. I just always bugged me. I don't know why. And just that song.
You made a good point. It just doesn't fit on the album. They should have just been done.
Yeah, the whole album just has this different feel to it than that one.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's almost like they might have felt pressure to put a cover because Smoking in the Boys Room was such a big hit. So maybe the record company kind of put screw on them, the pressure. But you're absolutely right. Doesn't fit the album. It would have been a nice B-side as like on a 7-inch single, but
the same thing.
I would totally take it off.
It's not quite as bad as Johnny Be Good by Judas Priest, but that wasn't the final track.
Yeah.
That's the worst.
Yeah, that's the worst.
Use that, but it's in the middle of the side 2, I think. I can't remember. It's on. Yeah. It's not the last song, so I couldn't use it. So I got 3 snuck in there.
There you go.
All right. Well, the album I picked, I don't own it because I think the album fucking blows. But it's by a band that I like. It's by a band that I really do like. And this song almost could have been a Saturday Night Live sketch. This is how this song is. But I'm going with How Many Say I off the Van Halen 3 album, which is the only Van Halen song with Eddie Van Halen on vocals. And you can tell, I mean, it's not even like a tongue-in-cheek. It's not like Happy Trails or one of the other Van Halen goof songs. Like, I think Eddie Van Halen really wanted this to be a profound song about homelessness and like, whatever. Like, it's sort of like That's the Way It Is by Bruce Hornsby. It's sort of like the Van Halen version of that track, it's sort of, or what's that Phil Collins song, Another Day in Paradise, or that's shit like that. But it's terrible. Eddie Van Halen has no business getting in front of a microphone, and singing this piano ballad. And then you've got Gary Sharon trying to harmonize with him. It's just awful. It's embarrassing. I mean, it's a terrible record to be sure, but then it's sort of like, well, let's double down on how bad this album is and close it off with one of the worst songs in the entire Van Halen. So
You know, I haven't heard that album for so long. I don't even remember it because it's been so long. I mean, I heard that album when it first came out, and that's it. It's been a long.
I don't even own it anymore.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
The album, not that song.
It's bad.
Bad, you know it.
Yes.
How many say
It's very, very, very.
it's really bad. Yeah. Anyway. All right. Well, thanks for hanging in there with us. If anybody's still left over, you guys are troopers. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. We will be back next week with another engaging topic. Thank you, gentlemen. Great picks all. And take care.